Hi, everyone. This is Tracy Malone from narcissistabusesupport.com. Today, I would really like to talk to you if you are divorcing a narcissist and you're questioning using your therapy records to show that you have PTSD or that you're being abused or any other things that you hope might come out of that. I have a very special friend and guest for us today. Bree Bonchay is the founder of Narcissist Abuse Awareness Day and a therapist and a brilliant, brilliant lady out there. And so we're going to talk about the Hello, Bree. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, hello, and thanks for having me.
We're going to have a great topic today, but if you could do me a favor and just tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
So, sure. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for over 20 years. And I also created World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day back in 2016. So, I started blogging about narcissistic abuse, and which led to the creation of World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. And ever since then, I've been holding an annual summit interviewing all the leading voices in the field. And really, as my mission is really just to increase and raise awareness and also to kind of provide healing resources for survivors. And so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, it's a great nutshell, and the World Narcissist Abuse Awareness Day is, I mean, it's our holiday, if that's a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we get to understand and be the voices that, you know, hey, this is what's happening. So, you know, there's nothing greater than what you do with that, and it is so important. So, thank you for all that you do, because I know that's a lot of work.
It is.
Before we were talking about this interview, we were talking about sort of the hidden risk of therapy records being called into a high conflict divorce. And you had so much to say. I'm like, we need a video about this because it doesn't get talked about, but almost every one of my divorce clients is like, let's get their records, let's prove they're a narcissist, let's do this, let's do that. Why do so many people think that this might help them and it might not help? What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, same here, in my career. I mean, oftentimes I work with people who are either in the throes of a high conflict divorce or at some point find themselves in one.
Mhm.
And there's a real big misconception, I think, around a few things. And one is, let's just say, I think people think that, well, my therapist gets it, right? They've probably helped me identify that the emotional abuse, the gaslighting, they're totally understanding. They're super supportive and they're a professional. So they'll be believed. And if my therapist can just hand over my notes, this will prove my case. And that's a pretty understandable place to come from. But I think what happens is they also are assuming in that your therapist compassion and understanding is going to then translate that same compassion is going to translate into the courtroom, and that's not the case. And then the other big thing that I think happens is people, there's just some misconception that therapy notes, even if you can prove, even if they do prove that you have a spouse that's abusive, I think they think that the court will take that, give it a lot more weight than
Mhm.
and yeah, you're shaking your head because we see it all the time.
Mhm.
And it's sad. It's just a sad reality that courts really don't give as much weight as we believe and hope that they should
Mhm.
in these cases. And I always tell my clients, and this is a conversation I have with them all the time, is I want them to understand the full legal consequences of opening up their notes, releasing all the protections when I, over the course of my experience, have not seen it really be helpful and in fact can backfire.
Yeah, I think it could backfire a lot. And as you were saying to me, the judges are not going to go, oh, now I see they're abused. That changes everything. It doesn't change anything. These are no fault states. You know, abusive parents still get their kids. It doesn't change anything to say, see, I'm in PTSD because of all this abuse. As much as it should matter, the courts just don't. They just glaze over it. They don't care. That's why all of these narcissistic divorces are so complicated because the courts aren't going, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not okay. So when somebody suggest to their lawyer, I want my records shown to prove that I'm a victim of abuse. Can you explain what happens legally when they sort of waive their confidentiality, right? That's what they're doing. It's not just give page 2 and 3, it's here's the file, right? How does that, how can that impact their case?
Yeah. So, okay. So therapy notes are protected and they're protected for a reason. It's a safe space. You tell your therapist the unfiltered truth. You talk about lots of different things that, and a lot of times that are really unrelated to your case, right? Like, so once you sign, Tracy, I think I lost you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You were
Should,
frozen there.
should I back up or?
It said once you sign, so let's start there.
Okay.
I'm just going to do
Okay.
this math. My
Okay. You froze. Oh no. Okay. So once you confidentiality and you release your protections to your records, and you aren't just opening the door, flinging it wide open for every conversation, every bit of information, not just the information that you want to share or that will help your case, but everything you've ever said can is fair game.
Mhm.
And the problem with that is lawyers can really seize the opportunity, and once is then they can spin things that you've said, and I think we can, I'll answer this, and I think about like what people's ideas of what notes say, because this is kind of important, because a lot of times, you know, people, I think that's the original problem, is that people don't really understand what therapy notes say in them. So maybe we should talk about that.
It's
um so therapy notes, I think people think is like this, like written play by play,
hmm
like a transcript of just what happened, who said what. And really, therapy notes are written for clinical purposes and medical necessity. Basically, uh, you have to support the insurance companies to want to pay for the sessions. So you have to support medical necessity. Basically, why does this person need treatment? And so in them, it's going to be a lot of symptoms, treatment, progress, emotional states. So
hmm
where people might think a therapy note says something like, on June 4th, client's spouse made threatening remarks in front of the children, right? That's what I think what people think, it's a running play by play. A therapy note will say something like, um, client reported feeling unsafe, tearful, anxious about interaction with ex-spouse over the weekend. Now, that's correct from a clinical standpoint. Um, they're like recipe notes. Like that's kind of what I explain to my clients. They're like recipe notes. So they say like add a pinch of salt, right? And so out of context, it just sounds sort of vague and confusing. But you know, in context of a toxic relationship or abuse, being tearful, anxious, is makes sense. But kind of going back to your question, going what a skilled lawyer will do now
hmm
is they'll take your diagnosis, words like anxious, tearful, things that are totally make sense in context, and they will actually can spin it and paint a picture of instability
hmm
and use it to damage your credibility.
Right. Sort of, instead of I'm healing from abuse, which is what they want the judge to see, that they get twisted into they're unstable, they're anxious, they shouldn't have the children as much, they've got these depression things, this has been forever, instead of it's actually because of the divorce and the pain they're going through. But I think that's the biggest thing is how it can get twisted by the lawyers, right? It gives them
Absolutely.
ammunition.
Absolutely. And it will, because it like therapy notes are really like shorthand for the therapist, right? And so and they're not designed to ever see court.
Hmm.
And that's a big thing, because it's not that therapists are doing anything wrong. It's that really we're not writing for our notes to ever see court.
Hmm.
And so we're going to look at diagnoses, which you definitely don't want in court, because any diagnoses can be
But
twisted.
hmm.
We're looking at emotional states. I mean, we might think you're wonderfully resilient and strong and capable and all these wonderful, like just a wonderful person in general. And, but that's not what the therapy notes are designed for. But that's what you'd want if for your court case, right? Like you want people to be focusing on your strengths and your great qualities, and but that's not what therapy notes are designed for. So that's something I think that people really need to keep in mind, of why what they think is really good for their healing doesn't always isn't good for their court case.
Right, right. As you were
Yeah.
saying that, I was thinking about my notes because I could take like 10 pages of notes in an hour, and I'm writing large because I'm looking at the person, but they would make no sense to anyone but me because I'm flagging with a little star. Ask them about this. Oh, that's something to follow up on. But and I'm not looking to do the diagnostic stuff you're doing. I'm doing it
Mhm.
what they said and how to respond and help them in
Sure.
that conversation. So, there's such a difference in a coach notes versus,
Purpose.
and neither one should ever make it into court, but at the same time, with therapy notes, there's such a risk, and we know narcissists, it's not them, Darvo, it's you. So if you come into there emotionally upset, as you should be, that's why you're going to therapy. The twisting is what is so dangerous.
And that's a really good point, because once, well, like another thing people will do is, okay, Bree, I get it. Like I'll have this talk with them, and I'll, assure them that there's nothing. I've said nothing. Like I'm very careful, knowing that I have clients that end up in court a lot. And we'll talk about this, but I am very careful what goes in my notes. And I'm gonna have some suggestions for people, but the thing is, so people will say, okay, well, then would you mind writing a character letter, which is, not necessarily turning over your whole record,
Mhm.
because when you do turn over your whole record, your therapist can now go from being your trusted ally in your healing to a witness in an adversarial process. And everything that they've ever written, all the language that was never meant for the courtroom, can get dissected, challenged, and then the focus goes from you being abused and your spouse being a potential abuser, to whether your therapist is right. And you don't want that spotlight to change.
Mhm.
That's not good. So people will then, a natural solution is, what about a character statement? Which I would love nothing more to write character statements for my clients. This is the problem with character statements. One, the court character statements are written from based upon client self-report. So I'm not a detective, I'm not an investigator. I don't listen to my clients trying to decipher what's 100% true or not. That's not my role. My role is to believe and support and help clients. And so courts know this, right? Courts know that anything your therapist writes is probably, they kind of assume it's inherently biased, because your
Their client.
therapist is a professional paid to support and believe you. And they're not fact-checked evidence. And so courts, that's what they want. They want fact-checked evidence.
Mhm.
And so that is a main problem with character statements, that the court really is just like, yeah, of course your therapist is going to say this about you. And it's treated like hearsay, right? It's what you said filtered through my notes. It doesn't make it necessarily true. And then the big risk, which brings us back to the original problem, is once your therapist enters any statement as evidence in your case,
Mhm.
now your whole record could be subpoenaed.
So the character letter opens the door to the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, because then the other side can make a case for, well, we want to understand where your therapist has, come to these conclusions and opinions. So we need to examine the whole record. And then we're back to square one. And again, it giving the court your therapy records is really like giving them your journal, only with a layer of clinical language that can be kind of damning.
Yeah, because it's
Like
written
you would,
insurance companies to say, pay me because she's got anxiety.
right, not pay me because she's, a wonderful person that has this horrible relationship that's caught. They're that's not what the insurance companies, they want diagnoses and then symptoms to support that diagnosis. They want to see, and this is another big thing, medical necessity. You have to show areas of functioning, so social functioning, work, home, different areas of our life, and how their diagnosis, their symptoms, what's going on in their lives is impacting these different areas of functioning. So that's not really painting you in the best light, right? Because we're basically saying you're not functioning well.
Mhm.
The court, I mean, a lawyer can spin that to, well, maybe she shouldn't have her, so she's not functioning so,
Mhm.
or her functioning is decreased. Like you just don't. Well, I would not want to leave that up to interpretation.
No, no, because again, narcissists twist it. If they find something that they've already been lying about and trying to say you're the crazy one, you're the angry one, you're the whatever they want to fill in the blank of, this could validate it only because they are cherry picking the
For
pieces
sure.
and then twisting it. Like, something is you're struggling with this, then you have mental issues. Then, you're struggling with that, then, you're unstable. Whatever it is, they always twist everything. So twisting your medical records and it just seems like it's not fair. It should never be crossing the line to go into a divorce court.
No, no, definitely not. It's not. There are things people can do though. Like I, one thing I think, if you're in a high conflict divorce or you think you might potentially end up in one,
Hmm.
you can use, so you can go to a therapist who, not through your insurance, you can private pay. That's not an option for everybody, and I understand that, but for the people that is an option for, you can go private pay. Because one thing, and I do for all private pay clients, is I never put a diagnosis.
Hmm.
I and and because I know a lot of my clients do end up in court, I'm super careful about what I write. Still, it can be spun. I have to write something,
Hmm.
but you can have that conversation with a prospective therapist about, like, I'm kind of concerned about this. What will you say in my notes? Do you have to put a diagnosis? And they don't. Not if you're private paying. And that's why a lot of people do private pay and don't go through their insurance, because they don't want their medical records, they don't want their therapy notes used or end up anywhere. They want their therapy to be a truly private place. And so if that's an option, I would say that would be the best option.
Yeah. As you were talking and just saying that whole little part, what came to me, which I hadn't thought about until now, which is if it goes into court. So if your records are sent off and maybe they get just the character letter and then it opens up the Pandora box and the whole pile this high gets sent over, um, it's actually, unless you get your case sealed, it's now public record. Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing to think about too, is that now
Yeah.
becomes part, and 90% of people do not know they should have their records sealed, or sometimes don't even have the money to pay the extra whatever cost it is to hide it away. And now you're that public record of your medical day-to-day things and what you presented on this way and that way is now going to be something that the narcissist could get. And again, now you've got the whole sealed record, and then they start to put it and they show your kids. You see, your mother's having trouble. See, she's so angry. She's in therapy. See, I just have these records.
Mhm.
It'd be so twisted against them. Do you run into that as well, where it gets unsealed and it gets used another way?
I mean, that's definitely it could happen. I haven't had any, but that happened too. But I mean, it could happen, and you're right. Like, I mean, if you're, your records, every note from your therapy, even for the if you've been seeing somebody for 3 years, right? That's a lot of notes. You talk about a lot of things, and so it doesn't just go to the other side's lawyer; it
Mhm.
goes to your ex. So your ex
Ooh,
is now can read every note. This is not information you want in anybody's hands, but especially somebody who's abusive. And you're right. Then they can share it with people. If you said anything about your sister-in-law or your own parents, I mean, like, this is not information you would want your ex being able to read.
right.
And so that is a definite, very good consideration,
Mhm.
because it isn't just going to their lawyer. They can read every single note.
And going back to the sealed part of that, my ex and his family had our record sealed because they had to give in a lot of financial documents they did not want. But as you were just saying, your spouse has already seen it. They don't need, even though it's sealed, who knows? It's sealed on the last day. It's not sealed when they get it. So off to your sister-in-law, off to this person, off to your parents, wherever it is, they
They
could
could share it everywhere.
or
Yeah,
the sealing, right? Ah, gosh,
yeah.
yeah, such a
And
value.
can you imagine all of that in the hands of somebody who will use it against you,
Yeah,
not just in court, but for
mhm,
as much and as long as possible, you
absolutely.
know?
And if you got young kids, it's going to be pushed into their heads. And oh, this
Yeah.
is such an incredibly powerful thing because people don't think about this. Is there a safer alternative to providing this without like interfering and compromising the privacy issues?
No, I mean, yes and no. So, okay. So I would say for most people, my push really is keep your therapy a private, sacred space, right? Your therapist, even if you're, because your therapist could be called to testify, and once if they write a character letter, if their notes are in there, and just because they may be great at therapy but horrible at testifying, so that's just one thing. So just because they get it and they're like me, I'm an expert, that doesn't mean that I can go up against some skilled attorney who is going to batter you and twist your words. And that is actually a skill. Like, you want somebody who's testified in court a lot
Mhm,
and knows what to, that's a whole different skill set.
mhm,
So that's one thing to consider. So I say keep your therapy this private, sacred place of healing.
mhm,
And what people do, and it's an option. I can't say I've seen it yield great results. Like, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, you think it's going to have a lot bigger impact on the rulings than it does, and it just doesn't. And people spend 60, 80, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you can hire like forensic evaluators. So there are psychologists
mhm.
that then interview you, they interview your ex-spouse, they do psychological testing, and they interview collaterals. They are really neutral. Okay, so they are paid to be neutral, and they do more investigative type forensic psychology, right? And so people will hire them, and then they give a report. They do very extensive interviews and tests and then they give a report to the court, and then the court weighs that. How
Mhm.
much? Everything is different. I will tell you that I've read a lot of these evaluations that my clients have gone on to do. And clearly, their ex is painted I haven't seen the word narcissist, but painted as being, as their behavior is aggressive, rigid, not in the best interest, hostile, antagonistic. Okay, these words, they're clearly painted in this way, but the outcome is not really significantly changed. So where they think, well, I should get like 80% custody of the children, or like this will, I should have all custody because of this.
Hmm.
I haven't seen it make that much of an impact.
No.
So unfortunately, like, and then it's like,
Hmm.
yeah. So it's a lot of money. Again, they're supposed to be neutral, but
Hmm.
it's still a, you
Right.
never know.
Vulnerability. You need less information out there. It's like when parents get a GAL who is an independent looker on and interviews the kids and interviews the mother and the father and the different houses and all that. That's what you're talking about here. But still, that sort of situation could either, really favor the other side, even if they're saying, okay, they're aggressive, they've got anger issues, whatever they are, it could still be twisted. And if you are, as most victims of narcissistic abuse are, presenting in that, like, can't sleep, can't eat,
Scattered
I've
and
lost
yeah,
80 pounds, I can't function, you will look like on paper who you really aren't at that moment. I mean, at that moment you are, but that's not who you are. They pushed you to this high level of,
sure.
anxiety and pain and anger. That's not who you are. And so that reflection would also be a really bad picture to get into the game.
Right. Yes, when you're new and it's all, this is just, you're just in the throes and thick of it and you're dysregulated because you've been abused and you're going through a horribly stressful event, a divorce, especially a high conflict. So of course you're going to be not at your best. This is not your best representation and you're going to be probably dysregulated, and you're absolutely right about that. So that is like, if this is what you and your lawyer feel is best for your case, and that you want to hire somebody who has a background in psychology and that can help you show whatever the lawyer feels that they need to show, that is an option.
Mhm.
And it is, I think it is always better because you are not, you know, it's just so much better. And for all the ways I've laid out, it is a better option, but it is pretty expensive. And in my experience, I haven't seen it really sway the needle that much.
No, absolutely.
So another thing I kind of talk about with my clients. And the other thing that people can do is they can collect digital evidence. So this is something we talk about a lot with our clients.
Mhm.
Um, Emails, voicemails, text, social media post, right?
Mhm.
Take the whole thing, get it timestamped so that it can't be, they can't say it's taken out of context, right? Because that over time can prove a lot of different things, right? So those are good. Character statements or witness statements, character references or character statements and witness statements from people family, friends, doctors, teachers,
Mhm.
neighbors,
Mhm.
anybody who may have seen something with their own eyes. That is very good, because that is, the court doesn't take that as your perspective filtered through your therapist. That is kind of considered evidence of fact, more factual.
Mhm.
And that is, those are things you can do, collect those from people or people who may have seen something. Also through institutions like the police, file records, hospitals, domestic violence centers that you went, like if you've gone to those places and you can show a sort of paper trail, that can also show
Mhm.
bank statements and things like that can prove financial abuse.
Mhm.
So I think if I think over time, if you journal your own journal, if you write in it consistency and clear, and it's the dates and times, and you just kind of stick to the facts, and you have a long record, that can corroborate a lot of the things that you are saying,
Mhm.
and then that gets taken with a lot of weight. Journals in that respect have a lot more weight. And if you have a pool of these things over time, that is going to help your case, or and show the court really in a way that they are going to respond to better.
Yeah. And the courts are looking for patterns. They don't want one time they did this. So your evidence is going to be aligned with this is the 50th time they did this, or this is what they always do. And here's 50 examples. or whatever you've got, that is such a much more powerful thing. But I have a couple questions I was right, like I do with my clients. You didn't even see me, but couple things that you said, and it went, oh, we should say that too, because let's just say your records are this high, and I have clients that have folders that big. They're big, right? And so when that gets turned over, guess who reads it? Besides your ex, besides their lawyer, besides the judge, your lawyer. Your lawyer is going to charge you $500 an hour to read 1,000 pages and then go, yeah, nothing's in there, but I had to check anyway. So it's a huge expense that people might not think about. But depending on how big it is, it could be a pretty big folder. And they don't know what they're reading, but you're paying them to just say, I didn't see anything that we have to worry about, because they don't know what to worry about. This is not their expertise, but you're going to have that huge cost. So that was one
True.
thing I wanted to say to make note of. My other thing was, what about therapy notes on kids? Because a lot of people will think if they turn over the notes that their kids are struggling, then the judge would see and maybe not get as much time for the abuser. Have you heard of that case?
That's a really good question. And I would just blanket say same problems.
Right.
You don't know what the first of all, you don't really know what your children said, even if you're getting reports from their therapist saying, yeah, they said these horrible things about their dad or their mother or whatever. But you don't know one exactly what was said and how it was documented. Again, therapy notes are not documented for the courtroom. They're not designed or written for the courtroom, and that's not really going to change.
Right.
And so what what they might be saying to you, yes, they told me this thing, that might not be exactly how it sounds. Again, it could be a recipe note.
Right. Right. And it could be, child loves both parents. And, even though
Yes.
80% of the notes was, conflict with one of them, or maybe not at all. But again, child loves both parents. Thanks for telling us. And the end of your case, you're not going to get what you want because you don't know what's in there.
Exactly. And why would you I heard a lawyer and I forgot how they said it, but basically never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So, right, and that was, I think it was Nancy Grace. I heard her say that. Like that's the rule of lawyers. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. And it's so same things like that. This don't don't
Don't open
don't
Pandora's box.
right. You don't know what's in there. Don't ask the question.
Exactly. All right, here's my last part, because we didn't even think about this, but again, when people are going through a divorce, this is something that to my clients comes in a lot, that a psych eval. They think if they get a psych eval of their potentially narcissistic person, that will sway the case. I did a video a long time ago for anyone that's watching. Look up Susan Guthrie and me. We did a video on how psych evals do not move the mark. They can come back and say they are a raging sociopath with this kind of tendency and that, and the judge goes, what? They still get their kid. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. Doesn't matter. And that's the truth, is that no matter what that psych eval of them says, some judges will go, it's got a little weight, and most of them are like, not my area of expertise. I don't see a risk. Have a nice day, and give me the $10,000 for the eval.
At least 10,000. Yes. And that's what like a forensic evaluator would do, right? They would do a psych eval on you,
Mhm.
on your spouse, and then all the collateral interviews. And again, I have to echo what you guys see. I have seen and read a lot of them. So it's not just what my clients are telling me. They have shared their reports with me, and
Mhm.
they're long and they're pretty detailed. And yeah, it really did show that what the behavior that they were talking to me about was clearly seen by the evaluator. So that was good, right? They didn't have to do anything. The evaluator saw it on their own through interviews and people's reports. But again, like you said, it does not, we think it should, and it probably should move the mark, like, but it doesn't.
Bill Robinson, you know, does
Really doesn't. And then they're $30,000 in the hole. And for,
yeah,
yeah. And they're still giving 50-50 or something super close to it, right? Like, because usually people do it for children.
more custody. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for more custody of the children. And yeah, and then they still end up with,
Right.
so
But as you were saying earlier, the key to this is evidence for that they have bad parenting. They don't do this. They don't feed the kid. Here's 8 examples. They don't do this. When the kid's there, they don't put on their diaper. They leave them in. They come back with a diaper rash. Showing bad parenting is what the judge wants, not any label that they're a narcissist and they do this and they're angry. Again,
that's
judges don't care. They're not in the psychological world. They want hard facts, and evidence is what that kind of thing is. The patterns of they do this all the time. And it's not that the kids cry and don't want to go there. It's that this happens or these are the behaviors. And that is what will matter.
and that's a good point. And that's when, like, I have enough clients who maybe people have seen that, right? They've seen the other parent be a bad parent, but they won't write a letter, right? They don't want to get involved. They see it, but they don't want to put it in writing for the court. So that is a real concern that, well, then what now? What do I do? Well, that's where the journal is really good, because if you're documenting it and you have a year, 2 years, even 6 months of documentation that is clear, just very matter, just the facts, right? Um, that will hold a lot of weight, because with the judge, and that will be better than any, I believe, therapy records could potentially
Yeah.
sway a judge in your favor, because that can corroborate everything that you're saying. You've taken evidence. And so,
Right.
yeah.
A much healthier and smarter thing than letting the doors of therapy open in a courtroom where we don't know what could come out. We don't know how
The
it can be twisted.
interpretations, at least you have control of what is said in this narrative, right? Like, you can make sure it is in context. It's not like a recipe, it's the full cookbook.
Right.
So
And you said something I want to clarify so people don't get confused, because you said the word journal to keep all this together. This is not the journal of da 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 da. He did this, and you're not expressing anger. This is not a journal. This is a documentation journal, if you would. This happened, this happened, this happened. Just the facts, ma'am, right? Don't
just
let
the
people think,
facts.
because if you put your journal in there with the emotional stuff,
Right.
story, that could get admitted and that could also be turned on you.
Exactly. It's just the facts, no emotion. This is what happened on this date.
Yeah.
That's it.
Spreadsheets. I tell you, my male clients are geniuses at spreadsheets. They got their evidence and they get it all organized. And it's a lot of work to do it, but when you're fighting a battle like this, it can make the difference. And that's
Yeah.
what all this for, is to protect the kids if they need protecting.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Bree, will you share with us how people can get in touch with you?
Yes. So they can find me. Probably the best place is on my website. And from there, they can kind of follow me on social media or whatever they want to do. But my website is my name, Bree Bonchay. So it's Bree Bonchay, BONCHAY.com. And that's probably the best place to kind of see what I'm all about and what I do.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for talking with us today. This has been a plethora of information, and I know that so many people have wondered. So, thank you for answering it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you for, like, agreeing to do this topic, because it's such an important one.
It really is. Thank you. I hope you guys found that helpful. Bree is brilliant. And she and I were talking, and she was just like, people are worrying. These records are not good for them. They need to know. So I hope that you found that helpful. I'll put her information down below. She's in California. And if you are looking at how to document this and how to document, like I was saying, what the court needs and showing patterns, I have a course on my website that shows you how to document, shows you what the judge is looking for, shows you what the rules of evidence are, and how to build the case without ever having to disclose your therapy record. So this is Tracy Malone. Visit my website, narcissistabusesupport.com. And remember, if you are divorcing, I have a book called Divorcing Your Narcissist. You can't make this shit up. And I will see you on the other side. Thank you so much.